Hey mathematics learners, welcome to Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. So on today's video tutorial, we're going to be looking at the difference between compound interest and simple interest, right? What is compound interest? What is simple interest? How do we do compound interest calculations? How do we do simple interest calculations, right? So when we're talking about compound interest, simple interest, ladies and gentlemen, we are basically saying that any interest that you earn on an investment that you make, right, is calculated using a principal amount, right? So for example, let's say you have invested or you want to invest, right? Um, let's say you want to invest 10,000 Rand. Okay, so that 10,000 Rand is called our principal amount, okay, the initial amount that you want to invest, right? So when you want to calculate, the interest that you'll earn on this investment, right? When we're talking about simple interest, we are basically saying that that interest that you'll earn on, this 10,000 Rand that you've invested will be calculated using this principal amount, all right? But now, what happens if we have to obviously do compound interest calculations? What is compound interest, right? When we're talking about compound interest, right, we are basically saying that if I'm investing 10,000 Rand into an investment account, right, to calculate the interest that I'll earn on this 10,000 Rand, they won't use the principal amount anymore, but they will use the accumulated amount. So, for example, let's say I want to invest this 10,000 Rand into, a fixed or an investment account, right? Okay, or a fixed deposit account, right? And I want to invest this 10,000 for like 3 years. Let's say in the first year, I'll earn an interest. So let me just say first year, I'll earn an interest of maybe 1,000 Rand. Okay, right? To calculate the interest that I will then get in the second year, I won't use that principal amount of 10,000 anymore, right? But I'll actually use 10,000 plus 1,000 to help me calculate the interest that I'll get in the second year, right? So when we're talking about compound interest, we are basically saying that interest is calculated using an accumulated amount, okay? But when we're talking about simple interest, we are basically saying that interest is calculated using the principal or the initial amount that you've invested or borrowed from a bank. Okay, so it's very important that we are able to understand that before we have a look at this question that I've basically created for us. So let's have a look at this question, right? So I chose this question because I think it will help us understand how we need to go about doing our solutions for simple interest, for compound interest. So please make sure that you pay attention. Question number 1, it says compare the following two scenarios. A, 1,500, okay, is invested for 3 years at 8% per annum, simple interest. Okay. B, 1,500 is invested for 3 years at 7.5% compound, 7.5% per annum compound interest. Okay. Which of the investments gives a higher return at the end of the period? Okay. So with this question, we are basically trying to determine if I'm investing 1,500 Rand, okay, for 3 years, okay, and I'm earning a simple interest of 8% per annum, how much will I have at the end of the investment period? Okay, and with B, if I'm investing 1,500, okay, for 3 years at a compound interest rate of 7.5% per annum, how much would I have at the end of the investment period? So we're going to start with the simple interest calculation. So I mentioned, when we're talking about simple interest, we are basically saying that interest is earned on the principal amount that you've basically invested, right? So let's basically do the solutions for A, right? So we've basically said that, okay, the principal amount that's been or that you've invested is 1,500. So we want to first start off by calculating what is the simple interest that you'll basically earn, okay, at the end of this investment period. So when we're calculating simple interest, SI just stands for simple interest. We will basically take that 1,000. Let's actually do this. Okay, so we've basically said that, okay, we're investing 1,500, that is our principal amount. Our N is equal to, for 3 years, and our I is equal to 8%. Okay, how much? That's A. What's going to be the accumulated amount, or how much would you have at the end of the investment period? So what do we need to do? So I'm going to start off by breaking this breaking this down. I'm going to start off by calculating, the simple interest, or the interest that you'll earn, okay, in 3 years from just investing this 1,500. So how do we calculate simple interest? So simple interest, right, is just going to be, we're going to take that 1,500, then we're going to multiply it by the interest rate of 8%. So 8% is 8 over 100. So what are we going to get here? We are basically going to get 120 rand. So that basically says that if you invest 1,500 at a simple interest rate of 8% per annum in the first year, the interest that you'll get, right, from your investment is just going to be 120 rand. Okay, so because I've mentioned that when we calculating simple interest is calculated on the principal amount. So that means that for us to even calculate the simple interest that we'll earn in the third year, the second year, we'll still use that 1,500. So please bear with me. I'm just trying to make a very important point here. So in the second year, okay, the simple interest for the second year, we are still going to take that we're going to still take that principal amount of 1,500. We're going to multiply it by 8 over 100, which is still going to give us 120 rand. To get the simple interest, or the interest that you will earn in the third year, right, we are still going to use that principal amount of 1,500 multiplied by 8 over 100, which is equal to 120. So what are we noticing here, right? We are noticing that when we're calculating simple interest, right, we will always just use the initial amount that we've invested. So instead of us just going through all these 3 steps to calculate the interest that we will earn in these different years, we can just simply do this to calculate the simple interest that will be earned if you basically invest 1,500 for 3 years. You can just take that 1,500 multiplied by 8% multiplied by 3, and that is going to give us 360. Okay, so it basically means that if you invest 1,500 at a simple interest rate of 8% for 3 years, the interest that you will earn from this investment is going to be 360. So that means that at the end, okay, at the end of the investment period, right, how much will you actually have, right? You will basically have that 1,500 plus that interest that you've earned of 360, right, which is 1,860. Right, so you basically need to be aware of that, right? So if we're calculating simple interest, right, we just take that 1,500, you multiply by interest rate, you multiply by the payment period, and then that basically gives you this interest that you would have earned. But now we still need to remember that we still need to take it a step further. If the question is asking us to determine how much will we have, because this is what the question is asking us, how much will we have? What is the return from the investment at the end of the payment period, right? So it basically means that you need to take that initial amount of 1,500 that you've invested, add it with the interest rate to basically give you the total amount that you'll get, okay, at the end of your investment period. So that is how we basically do our simple interest calculations, right? But what about compound interest, right? Let's see here. Now we invested 1,500 for 3 years at an interest rate of 7.5% per annum. Please take note of that, okay? Per annum, okay. Right, so what do we need to do here? Okay, first thing here as well, we want to obviously start off by calculating what will be the compound interest, right, that we will earn throughout, these payment periods. So we're going to start off by doing this. Remember, with compound interest, we did mention that interest is calculated on the accumulated amount. So you need to basically have that in mind when we are doing these calculations. So what are we going to do? So for us to calculate the compound interest, CP, we are just going to take that 1,500, okay? We're going to multiply it by, what is the interest rate? It is 7.5%, okay, multiplied by 1. Because remember here, we're just trying to find out what will be the compound interest in the first year. So that's what we're just trying to establish here. What is the interest that I will earn from my investment in the first year? So I'll take that 1,500, I'll multiply it by 7.5 over 100. What do you get? Okay, you'll find that, okay, at the end of, the first year, right, the interest that you'll get from your investment is 112 rand and 50 cents. Okay, so that's how much you'll have. That's added to that 1,500 that you've invested, right? But now, what does this mean? Okay, we don't just now, leave it at that. For us to calculate now the interest that we will earn in the second year, right? We are now going to take that 1,500. We're going to add that interest of 112,50 and actually get what is the accumulated amount, okay, at the end of the first year, right? So we're going to take 1,500 plus 112,50 to get the accumulated amount. So you'll get that the accumulated amount, or how much you have in your account after the first year, is 1,612,50. Okay, and now this is very important. We are now going to use that accumulated amount of 1,612 rand 0.50 to help us then calculate what would be then the compound interest that we will earn in the second year, right? So we're not using that 1,500 anymore, but we are using that accumulated amount, right, of 1,612 rand and 50 cents to help us calculate the interest that we will earn from this investment in the second year, right? So then we're going to continue. This is just the first part. So to get the compound interest, CI, compound interest, okay? So to get the compound interest, or the interest that we will get in the second year, what do we need to do now? We are just going to take that accumulated amount of 1,612,50 multiplied by the interest rate of 7.5 over 100, because it's 7.5%, okay? So it's 1,612.50 multiplied by 7.5 over 100. What do you get here? You'll get that, okay, in the second year, right, you will earn an interest of 120 rand 0.9375. We are not gonna round off anything. We are just gonna round off our final amount. So this is just the interest that you'll earn in the second year, right? So that basically means that for us to then calculate the interest that we will get in the third year, the final year, okay, of our investment period, we need to use the accumulated amount. So we're going to just take again this 160 there that we started off with. We started year 2 with 1,612, right? So we're going to take 1,612,50, then we're going to plus 120, the interest that we earned in the second year, to therefore get the amount that we're going to use to calculate the third year's interest. So it's 1,612 rand, 50 plus 120,9375. What are we getting? We are getting that at the end of the second year, how much you will have in your account is 1,733,4375. Okay, this is now the amount that we're going to use to help us calculate the interest that we will get in the third year. All right, so then in the third year, to calculate the compound interest or the interest in the third year, what are we going to do? We are just going to take that 1,733,4375, okay, multiplied by the interest rate of 7.5 over 100. What do we get? It's 1733.4375 multiplied by 7.5 over 100, and then you'll get that in the third year the interest that you'll get is 130 rand 0.0078 125. Right, I'm not going to round off, and the reason is that I just want to maintain my accuracy. Okay, so what are we seeing here? In the first year, what was the interest that I earned or yielded from my investment? It's 112 rand and 50 cents. In the second year, what was the interest that I earned from my investment? It's 120 rand 0.9375. In the third year, what was the interest that I earned from my investment? It's 130 rand 0.0078 125. So we can basically see that if we were to add up these three interests, right, we will basically be able to find or get the total interest that you would have earned from investing 1,500, okay, at an interest rate of 7.5 per annum at a compound interest rate. Okay, so then, okay, to calculate the total interest, right? Let's say the question just wants you, to determine what is the total interest that you obtained from your investment, right? You can just basically take that 100, and so to get the total interest, okay, earned, okay, you will basically just take that 112,50 plus 120,9375 plus 130,0078125. Okay, and then you'll get that now, right? If you've invested that amount at a compound interest rate, you would have earned or you will earn an interest of 363 comma 4453125, which is approximately equal to 363 comma 45. Okay, right. Okay, so that's basically the total interest that you'll earn, right? But at the end of the investment period, then how much would you have in your account, right? Then at the end of the investment period, all that we would do, right, we will just take that 1,733 comma 4375, and then you would add it with that 130.0078125, and then you'll get that. Okay, you will get that at the end of your investment period, how much you will have in this investment account will be 1,863 comma, I'm just going to round it off to two decimal places, 46, right? So that's basically how much you would have, right? Or if you just wanted to also calculate the interest that you'd have at the end of your investment, you could also just take that 1,863,46 and then you subtract it with the initial amount that you invested. Okay, or I'm just going to put a huge or. Okay, you could look at it this way. If you wanted to then calculate the total interest earned, okay, at the end of the investment period. We could have also just taken that 1,863 comma 46, then you minus it with the initial amount that you've invested, right? And then you'll still get the same answer of 363 comma 46. So that's just the total interest, right? But how much would the amount that you'd have, the total, right? This is just us getting the total interest that we've earned. But for us to get then the total amount at the end, okay, the total amount at the end of the investment period, right? It is just that 1,863 comma 46. Okay, so now if we're comparing these two scenarios, what are we seeing? What are we noticing? Okay, we started off with, doing the simple interest calculation. We found that if you invest 1,500 at a simple interest rate of 8% per annum for 3 years, you will basically have 1,860, right? And then for B, okay, if you invest 1,500 at an interest rate of 7.5% per annum compound interest, at the end of your investment you'll have 1,863.46. Okay, so what we can basically see from these two scenarios is that obviously the compound interest, right, basically gives a higher return at the end of the period. And also, even if we decided to do, this calculation with the same interest rate, right, you'll actually come to realize that when interest is calculated, right, using a compound interest rate, the returns are higher. Okay, the returns are higher. Okay, that's why it's always better, right? When obviously you're investing an amount in a bank, it's calculated using a compound interest rate because you get higher returns from your investment. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video tutorial. Just a brief introduction when it comes to compound interest and simple interest. In the next video tutorial, we're going to be looking at just basic simple interest calculations, right? And in the one that follows after, we're going to be looking at, these compound interest calculations that give most of you guys a bit of, a hard time. If they're talking about, an interest rate per annum that is compounded half yearly, what do we do? If you're given an interest rate per annum that is compounded quarterly, what do we do? So please make sure that you do not miss those video tutorials because I'm going to be taking you guys through the steps on what you need to do when you're given those situations. All right, and I'll see you guys on my next upload.
That is it, guys, and I'll see you guys on my next upload, Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. Bye, guys.